Greetings and salutations from a design for living. Today we have a very special occasion. In commemoration of St. Patrick's Day, I have two of my favorite leprechauns here today, Chrissy and Elizabeth. They will be facilitating this meeting. I will do the reading like last week out of the book. We will hear their experience with Step 12, Working with Others, Chapter 7 in our book. We left off on page 99 in the middle, actually right in the middle of the page. And we will give a recap. What they've explained thus far is we're not going to try and put all the consequences of the drinking together to make the life suitable for the alcoholic. What we're going to do is stress the importance of him staying sober and developing a relationship with a power greater than himself, emphasizing that if he is going to keep this gift, he's going to have to do what we're going to explain we're doing with him today, which is give it away. It says if there's separation in the family, let's not enter into any undue haste to get them back together. Their experience is sometimes the families come back together and the alcoholic slipped because it was too early. Some families are never reunited. Some relationships are so strained that there's just no reconciliation. So on page 99, if there be divorce or separation, there should be, and they reiterating this obviously, there should be no undue haste for the couple to get together. The man should be sure of his recovery. The wife should fully understand his new way of life. If their old relationship is to be resumed, it must be on a better basis, since the former did not work. This means a new attitude and spirit all around. Sometimes it is to the best interest of all concerned that a couple remains apart. Obviously, no rule can be laid down. Let the alcoholic continue his program day by day. When the time for living together has come, it will be apparent to both parties. Let no alcoholic say he cannot recover unless he has his family back. This just isn't so. In some cases, the wife will never come back for one reason or another. Remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. We have seen men get well whose families have not returned at all, or have seen others slip when the family came back too soon. Let me finish with one more paragraph because that kind of ties it up. Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. Ladies, Elizabeth, you want to go first because your name becomes first in the alphabet, and then Chrissy can come around the second time.
Thanks, Bill. Hi, Elizabeth, alcoholic. You know, this continues to emphasize what we were talking about last week, which is, putting sobriety first, like you said, and everything else will come. On page 18, it says we usually get here and life's pretty messy. We don't come in here on a high, right? And what I encourage people, especially about their family situation, is you've put them through hell. It might take a while for them to trust you. So humility would dictate that you focus on recovery first. So because you need to attract them back, not promote them. They're going to see your actions, not your words. And no matter what happens, as they go, hopefully they're really done with their old way of life, right? And they start to do what AA suggests. And as they do that, they start to see, like I have, hopefully, that when, God gives me what I need. And I have to have the humility to stay focused on that and realize I'm lucky to be alive. First of all, I was lucky to be alive. I was lucky I lived through my drinking. So it's not time for me to be making demands, on how my life is supposed to look. First, I really just need to focus on my recovery so I can be a good partner. I can be a good mother, otherwise they shouldn't be with me. Right. If I'm demanding, that's the cart before the horse, right? Demanding that I get my family back on my terms. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks. Go ahead, Chrissy.
Chrissy, alcoholic. The paragraph that Bill read, it's saying that we have a new way of life, and the relationships are on a better basis. It just made me think of what page 68 of the big book says. Perhaps there is a better way, for we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God, depending on our Creator, and we get our courage because we have faith in God. So just like realizing that we are living a new way of life, and we have a better basis. And the thing that it's telling us we need, which is actually a promise too, is that we have a new attitude and spirit all around. So I, as the alcoholic who's gone through these steps and has been restored to sanity and is practicing these principles in all of my affairs, I have developed a new attitude and I have a new spirit. So that's like my responsibility, and it's the gift that I actually receive. And then it says we continue our program day by day. So day by day, I have to continue practicing all of these steps. And the line at the bottom, reminding the prospect, but I also have to remember this as the alcoholic also, that my recovery is never going to be dependent on another person. It has to be my relationship with God. And when we do that, the promise is we're making spiritual progress. We're following God's dictates. We are in God's hands. The promises are incredible. We're going to, like you read it, we're going to live in a new and wonderful world. No matter what the circumstances are around us, it's that new world internally and how we experience everything. So I'll stop there.
Beautiful. I think my favorite line in that last paragraph was that when we look back, we realize, which means we become aware, we awaken to the fact that when we placed ourselves in God's hands, better things happen than anything we could have planned. And alcoholics have vivid imaginations, so that's a big statement right there. Now they're going to give us some directions. When working with a man and his family, you should take care not to participate in their quarrels. You may spoil your chance of being helpful if you do, but urge upon a man's family that he has been a very sick person and should be treated accordingly. You should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy. You should point out that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. Show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. Ask them to remember when they're impatient the blessed fact of his sobriety. If you have been successful in solving your own domestic problems, tell the newcomer's family how that was accomplished. In this way, you can set them on the right track without becoming critical of them. The story of how you and your wife settle your difficulties is worth any amount of criticism. Chrissy?
Oh, just the disease looks like this. I participate in quarrels. I'm a sick person. I arouse resentment and jealousy, and I'm impatient. I just want to say that's what I look like, and that's what I sound like when I'm still in my disease, and I still have an alcoholic mind, and I have not been turning my will and my life over to the care of God. I'm in the care of Chrissy. So that's, and that is not helpful. And our goal is to be helpful. I'll turn it to you, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Chrissy. It's so hard. Like, I've been on the wife side of this, as some of you know who know me. And I do share openly about what I went through because I got very close to drinking at 32 years sober, 34 years sober. And so I let them know I've been through it, and I know it's so hard after putting up with so much. Oh, now they're sober, and you still have to put up with stuff and be patient and let them grow, and know that that's very fragile for them. So I love to acknowledge to people that, yeah, it's hard. You've already had to put up with so much, and now here they're sober, and you want everything to be perfect right away, and it's not. I can't tell you how many times I would call my sponsor and scream and complain about something about my husband, and she would say, just love him. And I'd think, oh, that's right. That's what I'm supposed to do. 3 words, and she cuts through all my crap, So I definitely, and I love people who are in relationships, especially with other alcoholics or our codependent friends. And they share about that because it's hard. Relationships are hard. We're people who don't get along with people anyway at our best, It's so yeah, I just love to really just kind of let them know. And also it's helpful to know how long it takes. You know, physically they're healing, mentally they're still healing for a really long time. You know, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that until I went through with my husband his relapse and how long it took him to feel, you know, like his brain was even there, you know. And we're talking about, you know, he said it's like 2 years to get everything back, it feels like. So it can be a long process. So it's a lot of patience. But, you know, Chrissy, I talked about last week, when they're talking about a marriage, somebody is committed to a marriage. You know, I always suggest, like, if you want to stay married, make sure your sponsor is married. You know, they get it, right? They get that commitment, you know, that in sickness and in health. Um, I don't stay with somebody who's committed to being in the disease. No, but you know, in recovery, as long as they're trying, you know, then I get a chance to grow and be more patient. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept that when I'm in recovery and doing what I'm supposed to do, I assume that everyone else is in recovery. And when I'm headed for disaster, I forget that this is an individual illness. So just because we're married or have a partner in recovery doesn't mean that they can't start to get sick. And the worst thing is as we start to get sick, as soon as someone confronts me on my behavior, like my sponsor says it, I defend it. I defend my behavior. I don't acquiesce because I'm full of self and don't even know it. Brilliant. Assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. People have said we must not go where liquor is served. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go to their houses. We mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Our experience shows that this is not necessarily so. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. There is something the matter with his spiritual status. His only chance for sobriety would be someplace like the Greenland ice cap. And even there, an Eskimo might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin everything. Ask any woman who has sent her husband to distant places on the theory he would escape the alcohol problem. In our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking if we have a legitimate reason for being there. That includes bars, nightclubs, dances, receptions, weddings, even plain ordinary whoopee parties. To a person who has had experience with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting providence, but it isn't. You will note that we made an important qualification. Therefore, ask yourself on each occasion, have I any good social, business, or personal reason for going to this place? Or am I expecting to steal a little vicarious pleasure from the atmosphere of such places? If you can answer these questions satisfactorily, you need to go with no apprehension. Go or stay away, whichever seems best. But be sure you are on solid spiritual ground before you start and that your motive in going is thoroughly good. Do not think of what you will get out of the occasion. Think of what you can bring to it. But if you are shaky, you had better work with another alcoholic instead. Let's stop there. I mean, the rest of it's going to continue that, but that's enough to chew on for right now. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I love this. You know, this points out something that I think it's really important for us to know as we try to carry the message to others, what AA is and what it isn't. You're going to hear meeting rhetoric. It says people have said to us that we cannot. And when I see people say certain things, I realize that they don't have an experience with the big book, or they would see that. It's in there, right? And you know, I'm really glad I got sober at the age of 21, and I remember me and my friends in AA, we went to a bar too early, you know. It was too early. And it was a happy hour where I used to drink, and we just sat there miserable, looking at, staring at everybody. And I didn't go again, but I love live music. And so I used to really like kind of check in with myself, like, how am I doing today? How am I doing with Halt? How am I doing with my emotions? Do I feel insecure? Is this a time for me to go be in a bar, to go listen to music or whatever? And so I heeded that. And I always had my own transportation, always. Because one time I was giving someone a ride and she was door dawdling, and I would sometimes get this feeling like I need to go. Just need to go. It's time for me to go. Like, not even an alcohol. I don't know what it was, but it was just, I needed to honor that. And so I always made sure I had my own transportation to leave. But, yeah. And it's rare that I've had to play, I call it playing the alcoholic card, right? I have this girlfriend, she likes to go dance and go to bars and go hear music. And it's funny because I had to learn how to dance without having a few drinks, right? I have to wait for her to have a few drinks to dance. It's funny, right? I'm like, okay, cool. But one time she said, "Do you want to go to this place?" And it was on the Derby Eve, which is big drinking. It's like New Year's Eve here, and it was at a sports bar with no live music. And it was like, okay, I'm calling it. That sounds miserable for me. Like, I know, have fun. Definitely don't want to go with you. And I've told that story at AA meetings here in Louisville about that, how it was like, they all know which bar we're talking about, and it's a whole bunch of bars around there, and it's all about drinking. There's no other reason to be there other than get drunk, right? And people laugh because they're like, "Yep, that sounds miserable. We would not go to that. We would not have fun there. I don't want to be at an event where the entire focus is about getting drunk, right?" And I mean, yeah. So, go ahead, Chrissy.
Oh my goodness. You just reminded me of when I was like, I don't know, a few months sober. I was like, I got this. And I was like driving down the road, and my car is going back to the bar I worked at for a long time that I no longer worked at. I'm just going to stop in and show them how great I'm doing. Look how good I'm doing. It's like, no, no, that's not the right choice. Or when I was invited to go back to a place where we vacationed and where I always drank in my first 6 months of sobriety, and it just wasn't the right time. I wasn't strong enough yet. And so what you're talking about, Elizabeth, about like we get stronger in our sobriety, and the more we are confident in our ability to stay away from the drink and stay sober, like that way we don't need to be shielded from all of that. We don't need somebody to put bumper rails up to keep us from falling off the track, but it takes a little bit of time. It does take time to become spiritually fit. It's a fitness program where we get stronger in our sense of strength to handle the situations that we used to drink over and all of that stuff. So everything that we're reading about, like what's my motive for going? Am I just trying to impress people? Am I trying to, make sure that I don't know. I'm going to stop there. There's a spiritual growth that's happening here, and it talks about when I'm thinking about what I'm going to get, how I'm going to get something out of this, it's the wrong motive. Always going to be a motive when I think about what can I bring to this? What can I contribute to this? Is there something that I can bring here? Is it going to be helpful? The motive of being helpful and, like we say, doing God's will. Am I seeking to do God's will today, or is this something self-will is trying to get me to convince me to go choose and to go do? So we get better at determining which one is guiding, and usually the one that gets us in trouble is the self-will. When we follow God's will, it's like, you're just kind of more peaceful and enjoying and more relaxed. I'm going to give it back to you, Bill.
Actually, I have one more comment because you brought up something I forgot to mention. This isn't about making my life smaller or trying to arrange life to suit me. Like I don't, go, okay, well, I'm not going to do that and I'm never going to do that. And, that's about it. It's about following God's will, like you said. And that day, if I have an event coming up, right, that involves drinking, I wait and see how I feel that day. And I pray and I ask my higher powers, is this something I'm supposed to do? Right? Because there might be a strong urge. Yeah, you're supposed to go. And sometimes when I have that, I'm like, what am I here for? I look around to see what it is. Why does God have me coming here? Right? And it's cool, right? Because sometimes you can see it. You can see immediately, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to go talk to that person. And that's just beautiful. And I don't have to worry about it until then. You know, I always tell people this is about living in the day. You know, if I'm going to worry about what I'm doing next week, I'm not in the day. And I know I can trust myself today that I am going to pray and ask my higher power what's right for me today. Just like it says on awakening, we consider our plans for the day. I pray and I ask God, what do you got for me? You're my employer now. What are we doing? You know, and that includes those. And I always tell people I'm working with, you know, if you have an event you're going to, I make sure they know, tell me what time I'm available. I will make sure to have my phone on for you, you know, to call me if you need to during that event. And I did that with somebody early in sobriety with my sponsor. And just knowing that she was on the other end of the phone, I felt comforted by that. So thanks.
Thank you. You know, they say, you talk about an alcoholic who cannot meet these conditions every day still has an alcoholic mind. When Roland Hazard went to Carl Jung, Carl told him, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I have never been successful where the disease existed to the extent it does in you. And the doctor's opinion talks about a psychic change. In our appendix on spiritual awakening or spiritual experience, it talks about a psychic change in our thinking, a change in our personality sufficient to bring about recovery. And the only thing here says, assuming you are spiritually fit. Sometimes I'm not always the best one to determine my spiritual fitness. It's good to talk to a sponsor. And so why sit with a long face in places where there is drinking, sighing about the good old days? If it is a happy occasion, try to increase the pleasure to those there. If a business occasion, go and attend to your business enthusiastically. If you are with a person who wants to eat in a bar, by all means go along. Let your friends know they are not to change their habits on your account. At a proper time and place, explain to all your friends why alcohol disagrees with you. If you do this thoroughly, few people will ask you to drink. While you were drinking, you were withdrawing from life little by little. Now you are getting back into the social life of this world. Don't start to withdraw again just because your friends drink liquor. Your job now is to be at the place where you may be of maximum helpfulness to others. So never hesitate to go anywhere if you can be helpful. You should not hesitate to visit the most sordid spot on earth on such an errand. Keep on the firing line of life with these motives, and God will keep you unharmed. Many of us keep liquor in our homes. We often need it to carry green recruits through a severe hangover. Some of us still serve it to our friends, provided they are not alcoholic. But some of us think we should not serve liquor to anyone. We never argue this question. We feel that each family, in the light of their own circumstances, ought to decide for themselves. We are careful never to show intolerance or hatred of drinking as an institution. Experience shows that such an attitude is not helpful to anyone. Every new alcoholic looks for this spirit among us and is immensely relieved when he finds we are not wish burners. A spirit of intolerance might repel alcoholics whose lives could have otherwise been saved had it not been for such stupidity. We would not even do the cause of temperate drinking any good, for not one drinker in 1,000 likes to be told anything about alcohol by one who hates it. Chrissy?
Wow. I mean, talk about selfish. You have to change everything you're doing to make me comfortable. You know, that's what an alcoholic who's not like spiritually fit is going to, you know, say. You need to stop drinking in front of me. You need to stop, you know, doing this. I need this, and everybody arrange yourself. It's like the actor managing and controlling everything all around them. And being a victim to the delusion that they could just rest satisfaction and happiness if they manage everything and everybody out there well. And so I just thought, oh, that sounds like the epitome of I'm still really selfish if I'm trying to, you know, make everybody else change on my account. And the other thing was it says keep on the firing line of life with these motives. And they're talking about the motive of being helpful, to be of maximum service, to be of maximum helpfulness to others. That's a motive. And remember on page 27, it says, Dr. Carl Jung is saying, vital spiritual experiences, huge emotional displacements and rearrangement, ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. And like my motive has always been, what's in it for me? How do I get what I want? How is this going to help me? How is this going to help me? How is this going to help me? And the new motive is, how can I be helpful to others? It's like that is a psychic change. That's a 180 from one way to another way. And I couldn't make that happen myself, by the way. I don't know. I'm going to turn it over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Here's another place where we can see the difference between what you might hear by people in meetings versus what's really in the book, right? Because I run around to some Facebook groups that have, their AA support, and you hear all kinds of stuff and people trashing alcohol and saying they wish it was outlawed and all this stuff. And it's like, do you want to hear that if you're looking for, like, I get that. I don't want to go deal with a bunch of people who don't like drinking, why would I want help from them? They don't understand, and, this is another place where I can practice humility too, because these are mistakes that previous groups made, right? Aligning themselves with outside issues, including alcohol, whatever, it was right after Prohibition when AA got developed. And so it's very humbling to me. I didn't read AA Comes of Age for a very long time. I'm kind of a lazy learner. So somebody told me, if you're in AA service, you really need to read that. And I did. And it was so humbling to read. It was like, oh my gosh, I've been doing all this stuff wrong. And they already made these mistakes. They already made them. That's why they came up with the traditions. Why am I not talking about them more? Why am I not carrying them around, And having intolerance towards alcohol is an outside issue. And but it's even worse. It can be so damaging, to somebody who wants help. And this also puts me in mind of, anonymity. I was one of those recover out loud and proud and tell everybody I'm an AA and I've been around, I'm so, and if anybody needs to know, just let them know. And I didn't realize, think about somebody who's ready for help versus someone who's not. If they're not ready for help and they know I'm in AA, I might be a barrier for entry for them. They might say, ew, she's in AA, ew, that's terrible, but when they're ready for help, it says, we find it better to let our friends recommend us, because when they're ready for help, they're asking, who does this? So I have a lot of good friends that they know me, and they know if you know somebody who has a problem with alcohol, you're welcome to share my number. But I don't do that recover out loud stuff anymore. I keep it, I may share in a Facebook AA group, a private group, about my anniversary or something, but I don't do it all over my social media anymore, because I've learned better. So anyway, yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you both. And again, I think they're reiterating, and they're going to do it again one more time, is that alcoholism does not come in bottles or liquor stores. It comes in people. It's our allergic reaction to the liquid drug alcohol that sets us apart as a distinct entity. And on Wednesday, I go to two different prisons, not far from each other. It's not like I'm doing a great thing, but they have one that's a quarter mile from the other that starts at 8 in the morning till 9. And then we drive up the street and go through Clarence, and that one starts at 9:30 to 10:30. And it's interesting. I had an intuitive thought the other day. Let's assume, and that's a big word to make an assumption, but let's assume they really don't have access to liquor in there. Yes, they can make hooch, but it's a pain in the rear end. And a lot of them are in there and recovering from what put them there. And I asked $1 million question. I said, has anyone in here, knowing that there's no alcohol accessible, have you ever had the obsession to drink and half the hands went up? So even if we put an alcoholic on a place where there is no alcohol available, it does not stop what takes place in our mind. And the book tells us that's where the problem centers. So it was interesting. I know when it's available, if the obsession hits, I know where to go and I'm going. But how about if I couldn't get any, if I was in a dry country and the obsession hit from the restless irritability and discontentedness brought about by abstinence with no solution? What a terrible state of mind to be in because I can't solve the problem. Okay, someday we hope that Alcoholics Anonymous will help the public to a better realization of the gravity of the alcoholic problem. But we shall be of little use if our attitude is one of bitterness or hostility. Drinkers will not stand for it. After all, our problems were of our own making. Bottles were only a symbol. Besides, we have stopped fighting anybody or anything. We have to. Elizabeth?
Yeah, again, driving home that point, right? This is bigger than what's in that bottle. I mean, it took me forever to see that alcohol was the problem, and then I get here and find out it's not the problem. It's a symptom of the problem. I was using that as my solution, and if it still worked, I couldn't tell you that I wouldn't still be doing it, but it wasn't working anymore, and it was causing too many consequences. But I just love that, over and over, and it takes a while to learn this. I was working with someone recently who's just filled with resentment, wanting to control things in her life, and it was almost like you could see her face change, and I was like, yeah, we can't stay sober with all that. Like that will lead me back to drinking at some point. And I felt so bad because I could see her face change a little bit, like, uh-oh, this is bigger than just drinking. I'm gonna have to change. Because I asked her, do you know what a psychic change is and why we need one? And we started to talk about that. And, even though I'm 37 years sober, I've been doing this for a long time. I still have this part of me that is so defiant. Like you said, Bill, somebody questions you, and the first thing you want to do is defend yourself, And it's my second nature to react selfishly to life and want you to like me. And I didn't mean to do anything wrong and make it about me, and like go into this whole thing. And to really put myself on that, put myself in God's hands. And I'm a bit, it is a pet peeve for me when people say, step 3 is just a decision, and tell this frogs on a log story. A decision is an action. Hello. That's a pretty tough one too. And I have to be fully willing to see that my old way of life is not working. And I'm so good at ignoring things. Wow. Let's not talk about whether or not I'm ready to go to see my accountant. Am I ready? No. Am I putting it off? Yes. Do I know what month it is? Yes. Right? I still have pockets of my life where I'm like, just don't want to deal with it. Right. And then you ask me how I'm doing. We'll talk about something good. We'll just focus on something else. Like I still have that part of me. And I'm constantly turning to God and saying, help me with this. Because the pain of being in self-will today is just so painful. It doesn't get easier to be in self-will, So I love that, the idea of just not fighting anything or anyone. And if you don't have a sponsor that you really trust, like I really trust my sponsor, and I find out how important it is to really be able to know that she is solid. I call her for spiritual guidance. I don't call her to play therapist with me. She didn't want to play therapist, I call her because I want to live this way of life, and it's not easy because my self-will wants to be in charge. And that's my natural reaction that I have to watch for, like it talks about in step 10. I'm watching for it. Oh, there it is again. And sometimes I feel like I'm dragging that part of me through, that great little phrase we have, fake it till you make it, or suit up and show up. I do what I'm supposed to do. And sometimes that reduces that ego. When I do things I don't want to do, because I know that's the humble Elizabeth would want to do that because my God wants me to do that. If I'm in the world of the spirit, that's what I do. It's when I'm in ego that I don't want to do that stuff. And it is a decision, and God, the results are so great. You know, like Chrissy was talking about, it's so much better. And I have to experience that. I don't believe you till I experience it, you know, and then I do, and it's great. And then I keep doing it. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a turning point. Made a decision. I'm at a turning point every breath, every moment, every situation, every day. I'm at a turning point all day long. So, you know, am I going to go back to my old way that looks like what they're describing, a spirit of intolerance, not helpful, hate it with hate, right? Being bitter and hostile. That's my old way. The old way of life is bitterness, hostility, and being of little use. And I spent a lifetime feeling useless and not knowing why I felt so useless. But I can't be useful and hateful at the same time. It just can't. It doesn't work. It's like I gotta pick a side, you know. And when I'm in that spirit with God, I actually have the ability to be useful and feel useful and helpful. I was just thinking about, because the bottles were only a symbol, our problems were of our own making. If you go back to page 51, it says, you know, we are baffled by the seeming futility of existence, and to show the underlying reasons why we make heavy going of life. I mean, that's what we're doing, right? It says, leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory, and they show how the change came over them. And it's like, that's it. When I'm not treated for my alcoholism, my life is very unsatisfactory, and I'm suffering, I'm miserable, and I'm unhappy, you know. And that's the real problem, is that I have untreated alcoholism. I haven't gotten the solution that I need that's actually going to help me, that is going to help me to overcome all of that. And then the very next lines that it says is, when many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness, not even that, oh, that God's here, but like my consciousness of the presence of God is today the most important fact of my life. That's a powerful reason to have faith. Like when I put my faith in God instead of my faith in like all of the old ways of living my life, self, that's when I get to experience like the life where I'm in neutrality. I'm not in a fight with life. I'm not in a fight with people. I'm not in a fight with everybody and everything. I'm at peace. And I have the peace that transcends all understanding. You know, it's like I start to experience that. And it really is like that clear decision that I make, and the actions I take, turning my will and my life over to the care of God instead of self, and finding what's blocking me along the way, and being willing to let God help me and to remove the things that are in the way of my ability to be useful. It's bringing and it's asking for and accepting spiritual help. The one thing I didn't want to do for like a lifetime. And I finally started following the directions that the big book is telling us. And that's when life starts to go rocketing into, you know, like, holy crap, I have the ability to feel happy and stable. And it's contingent, obviously, on how much I trust God rather than myself. Back to you, Bill.
Thank all of you. You know, we've been through the 12 steps here. We are, we finished, we concluded chapter 7, working with others. I'm not going to start anything new today, but I'm going to leave what I'm about to say on the recording, because someone will need to hear it somewhere someday if they ever listen to this. So at the beginning of this chapter, practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. And this, of course, is our 12th suggestion, our 12th step. And I woke up this morning feeling so disconnected. And I was talking to God, and I let him know that I need some newcomers. And as I'm looking, because I'm feeling so disconnected, I know I got to get outside of myself. I've got all this morbid reflection. And all of a sudden, 5 people immediately come to mind that he has put in my life to help. And because I have found fault with them or don't like the way they're behaving, one by one, I'm dismissing them right out of my life. And the answer is right there. Why do I expect a guy who's 2 months sober to know what I know after decades of being here. I expect them to be well. I expect them to be honest. I expect them to keep their commitments. And all of a sudden, I'm taking the gifts that God's sending me, throwing them out, looking for another gift. Well, I reached out to each and every one of them. I had a good talk with this one guy who really wanted to work with me. And it wasn't that I was trying to tell him that his God was wrong, but I guess I was. I didn't want anyone to define or comprehend this power, which is God, and then sell it to me. And I had created a schism between us, and he really wanted to work with me. And I let him know I was sorry. We're going to start working together. It isn't amazing. It's like the spirit came alive as soon as that happened. So if I'm seeking an answer here, the problem's in me. It's never in them. I forget that sometimes because I can get real self-righteous and judgmental. But how can I take the pearls and the gifts that God gave me and determine that they're not the ones that I really need? The insanity of this disease, I was so blocked, and that's where it came from. I was finding fault with the gifts. Hence, I was finding fault with the giver of the gifts. But his faithfulness is such that he never lets my bad behavior interfere with his love for me. I'm going to stop the recording here. We want to hear from you guys. We'll stay on here till everyone gets a chance to share if they'd like. Or we'll close at noon, at 1 o'clock your time, our time, just depending on how it goes. But I'm going to stop the recording for now, Rob, all right?